Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto trains by his mother and gets a massive harem part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Konoha vs the Hunters. The jungle of Uzugakure. The Konoha Junin were currently engaging in battle with the pack of raptors that ambushed them earlier. Guy was engaging two of them. The one on his right side snapped at his head but he ducks and uppercuts the creature in its lower jaw, and then kicked him in the chest hard, sending it flying and crashing into one that had Kurenai cornered. Kurenai looked at Guy and nods a thanks but then her eyes widen. Guy, you're left, she cried out as another raptor leapt into the air, heading for Guy who turned managed to sense the creature heading for him and flips away just in time to avoid its claw swipe. The raptor snarls in frustration and glares at Kurenai who was in a defensive stance. The raptor stopped and appeared to be grinning. Kurenai raised an eyebrow and before she could react, another raptor head-butted her in the side and sent her crashing into a tree. She groans and tries to get the stars out of her head. Her eyes widen in fear as a raptor appears in front of her with its mouth open and brings its head down. She rolls to the side to avoid having her head bitten off but the raptor then leaps and lands on top of her and brings his open maw down on her again. Kurenai manages to plant her foot on its chest to stop the creature but struggle to keep maw from ripping her face off. The raptor pushes itself forward while growling and Kurenai adds more strength to her foot. Damn it, this creature is strong. She thought as saw saliva dripping out of its mouth and landed on the side of her face while she grimaces in disgust. Hiya! Yelled Anko and the alpha raptor was seen flying towards the one that had Kurenai pinned. He crashes into the other one and they're sent tumbling to the ground. Anko appears beside Kurenai and helps her up. Kurenai took one look at Anko and couldn't help but sigh. Her hair was a mess, her trench coat was torn up, and she had cuts, dirt, and slash marks all over her fishnet outfit was especially ruined. Anko, what the hell happened to you? She asked while said woman was snorting. Stupid lizard ruined my favorite coat. Look at it, she whined while one of the sleeves fell off and hit the ground. Anko looked down at it and yelled. That does it. That lizard's hide is mine. She screamed and charged at the dazed alpha raptor who just got up as did the other and then got socked in the head hard and was sent flying into a tree and hitting it hard. The alpha groaned and staggered a little. It snarled at Anko and let out a roar filled with rage. It was about to charge but froze for a bit. He then let out a few chirps and hisses and the other raptors stopped their fighting and ran off into the jungle. The alpha gave Anko a look and snorted at her. It then retreated back into the jungle while Anko yelled, "Same to you, pal." Neji was tired and pulled out a chakra pill and ate it as did everyone else. Before anyone could say anything, a figure leapt into the air and landed onto the ground. Everyone's eyes widened when he stood up slowly. He was 6 feet and 17 years old. He wore a short-sleeved dark blue hooded trench coat and also wore a pair of black cargo pants with Anbu-styled boots. On his upper body he wore a black long-sleeved skin-tight muscle shirt that hugged his body like a second skin and showed off his arms, chest, and abs and had yellow-orange slitted tinted red eyes that radiated power. He also wore a gray-colored flak jacket that was zipped up and had extra pockets on them and a collar. He also wore a black mask that covered half of his face and a pair of long blonde spiky bangs that were crimson at the ends but stopped to the sides of his face. He also had on black fingerless gloves that had metal plates on them and also wore armguards on his arms. Strapped to his back was a black katana. The hilt was black and had 5 holes and a silver metal tip at the end. The guard was silver and the sheath was black, Snake Eyes blade from G.I. Joe Rise of the Cobras. He also had 2 strange knives strapped to the back of his belt as well as 2 on his right and left leg. He glared at the Konoha nin and released murderous intent that was on par with a Sanin's, making it difficult for them to breathe, especially Neji and Kiba who never felt this much in their life. What are you Konoha nin doing in my territory? He asked in a dark tone that sent a shiver down their spine. Even Anko was shivering when she looked into this man's eyes. She saw her death. Akamaru was whimpering and shaking from the glare. Asuma, Guy, and Kakashi had beads of sweat drip from their face. Were her to retrieve 2 of our ninja Ryushi Juti. We didn't come here looking for trouble. Asuma said, hoping that he wouldn't attack, but the man just stares at him blankly. Is that so? Well, I'm sorry to say that I can't hand them over. He answered, getting shocked looks from them. What? Anko yelled and was about to charge until Kurenai grabbed her arm. Anko looked at her and saw the Genjutsu mistress shake her head. You bastard, give me back my sister. Kiba yelled and flexed his claws. Ryushi just looked at the Inuzuka and snorted. No, he said, making Kiba growl. What did you say? He snarled, releasing murderous intent on the bounty hunter, who just laughs. Is that all you've got? Pathetic. I've faced pirate lords with more intent than the amount you're releasing, and I suggest you cut it off or I'll make you. He says as he cracks his gloved hand. Neji sees the look on Kiba's face and responds. Kiba, don't act rash. He's antagonizing you to attack him, and don't forget we're facing the Ryushi Juti. Not to mention that we're in his territory, so calm down. The Hyuga says and looks at the man with his Byakugan, but to his shock he can't figure out his. Kiba clenches his fists in frustration. Damn it. Guy then speaks up. Please, Ryushi-san. We're just here to get our comrades back. Like my friend Asuma said, we're not here to fight you. The spandex-wearing ninja said. Naruto stares at the man but chuckles. Like I said to your teammate, I won't hand them over. Now leave before I make you. He says, getting impatient. I'm not going anywhere until I get Hana back. Damn it, now either you do it or I'll make you. Kiba roared out loud. Ryushi smirks under his mask. Why don't you make me mutt? I'll be more than happy to kick your sorry ass around the field and back. He says. The Inuzuka's eyes flash with anger, and he then charges at the hooded figure in a blind rage and ignoring the yells of the others telling him to stop. Ryushi smirks while Kiba charges at him. Kiba was about to strike him in the face until Kiba finds himself on the ground with his arms pinned behind his back and feels the cold sharp end of a blade pressed against his neck and freezes. You shouldn't let your emotions cloud your judgment, Konoha-nin. It could get you and your comrades killed, said a feminine but dangerous voice. Sitting on top of Kiba with a blade at his throat was a red-headed female who seemed to be around 14 to 15, wearing a mask similar to the Ryushi Judi's. Her eyes were bluish-green and slitted. She wore a black cloak over a red and black ninja outfit, and strapped to her back was a katana in a red sheath. Asuma cursed at Kiba's actions. Kakashi was about to pull out a kunai and strike Kasumi with it. Keywords were about to, but then hunched over and gasped in pain as a fist connected to his gut, courtesy to the Ryushi. Bad move, he whispers silently. The bounty hunter then backhanded the nin on the side of his face and sent him flying into Guy, who avoided being hit and saw an incoming fist heading for his face and barely blocked it, but the strength behind it sent him crashing into a tree. Neji tried to sneak up behind the man and strike him in the back with a Juken attack, but Ryushi sidestepped the attack, shocking the Hyuga and grabbed his wrist. Before Neji could react, Ryushi kneed him in the chest, making him gasp out in pain, and then he grabbed him by the face, lifted him into the air and slammed him into the ground hard. Then he ducks to avoid a roundhouse kick from Anko and sweeps kicks her, making the snake mistress hit the ground hard, and then twists his body to avoid being slashed by a trench knife and hits Asuma in the gut with an elbow. Asuma grunts in pain as the hunter vanishes in a blur when Akamaru snaps at him with his teeth and appears next to Kasumi. The other nin get up but stop. Don't move or I'll give your friend here a new hole to breathe out of. Kasumi says in a threatening voice, making them tense up. Ryushi, however, just smirks at them and dusts off his trench coat. I warned you, nin, not to do anything, and now look. We have a hostage, he said while Kasumi punches him in the head to make him stop squirming. Great, what do we do now? Anko asks. Asuma sighs in frustration and glares at Kakashi. What the hell were you thinking trying to attack her? She would have slitted Kiba's throat and killed him before your kunai hit its mark. The son of the Sandaime growled while the Cyclops flinches. Ryushi chuckles while looking at the nin. How about a trade-off? I'm willing to hand to Mongrel over, but you have to hand those two over. Ryushi says, pointing to Anko and Kurenai, getting a shocked look from the nin. What? Are you serious? Asuma asks, getting a nod from the nin. You two are Kurenai Yuhi and Anko Mitarashi, correct? Ryushi asks while the two women nod slowly. The two nin I have with me now are your friends Hana Inuzuka and Yugo Azuki, correct? He asked, and again they nod. If you wish to see them, then you must disarm yourselves and come with us. The rest of you get off my lands. He said while the male's eyes widened. Why should we? Kakashi asks, getting another glare from Asuma. Ryushi's eye twitched and he growled. Because if you don't, I'll kill your friend here as well as the rest of you if you don't get the fuck out of here, you stupid scarecrow. He growled, getting a sneer from Kakashi, who was about to speak again, but Asuma beat him to it. Shut up, Hatake. You're not making the situation any better. He yelled, making the copy nin zip it. Asuma lets out a sigh and looks at Kurenai and Anko. Disarm yourselves and approach him, but don't do anything. He orders, and they reluctantly nod and remove their weapons. They then walk toward Ryushi Juti, who pulls out two chakra-suppressing cuffs and puts them on the two kunoichi. Aibo, partner, toss the mutt to them. He says, getting a nod from the girl. As soon as she gets up, she kicks him between the legs hard, getting a girly scream from Kiba while the other males except the Ryushi wince. Gomen, sorry. She says, but not in an apologetic way, and tosses him to the male Junin while he holds his puppies in pain. Kasumi pulls out two blindfolds and puts them around their eyes. Can't have you knowing the location of our hideout, she says, and pushes them forward while Naruto stood in front of her eyeing the other nin. Kakashi looks at Asuma in shock and speaks. Asuma, you're not seriously gonna let them take Anko and Kurenai, are you? What if they? He starts to say, but Asuma glares at the man. We had no other choice because you tried to pull a sneak attack on that girl, Kakashi. We could have lost Kiba because of your stupidity, and I'm sure as hell not gonna explain to Sum why she lost two of her children. He replies, getting a pale look from the Cyclops. Now that they're gone, get the hell off my lands before I add your heads to my trophy collection. Ryushi demanded while his eyes glowed dangerously. Asuma motions them to retreat while Asuma stands there staring at the man. No harm will come to them, right? He asks while the nin nods. No harm shall come to them. I may be an assassin, but I'm not a cold-blooded murderer, and I'm a man of my word. Tell your cage to keep her pets on a leash, or else she'll find her ninja forces reduced in half. He says in a harsh tone and vanishes in a flash of yellow light, scaring the Junin. Asuma sighs and rubs his hair back in frustration. Tsunade-sama is not gonna like this. God, this sucks. He mutters and then shunsons away. Meanwhile, a blindfolded Anko and Kurenai were being led through a dark tunnel in an underground lair by Kasumi, who had one of their hands in hers. So where the hell are we, Gaki? Anko asked, and a tick mark appeared on Kasumi's head. I may be a Gaki, but I can still kick your ass, Ba-chan. She said while Anko growled. I'll have you know I'm only 25 Gaki. She said while Kurenai sighs. Really? I thought you were at least 30. The redhead replied while Anko's face turned red and was about to retort until Kurenai spoke up. In case you haven't noticed, Anko, we're hostages with our chakra sealed, so please don't mouth off. She said, and Anko mumbles about smartass brats calling her old while Kasumi snickers. Just because you're hostages doesn't mean you're gonna get tortured. Even if you're Konoha-nin. She said, getting raised eyebrows from them. Is that so? If you're not gonna torture us, what will you do? Anko asks, and Kasumi looks at her with an eye smile. First, I'm getting you some clothes to wear. You look like a hooker when you wear nothing but a shredded trenchcoat, a fishnet outfit, and a skirt. Anko's eyebrow twitched, and Kurenai had to hold in a giggle that was about to come out. That stupid lizard ruined my coat. She mumbled. Raptor. Kasumi answered, getting their attention. A what? Kurenai asks. Those lizards you faced earlier were raptors, and they're not lizards. They're actually the ancestors of the bird family. She said like it was no big deal, but Anko's jaw dropped. Are you telling me that I got my ass handed to me by an overgrown featherless turkey? She asked and Kasumi said one word. Yep. Anko hung her head down and sobbed quietly. Kurenai just sweat dropped and then asked a question. If I may ask, are Hana and Yugo okay? The Genjutsu mistress asks. They're doing okay but are recovering from the injuries they got when they were captured and almost raped by the Kumaishi, Stone Bear, and the Shishi Hekareki, Thunder Lion. Luckily me and Ryushi killed those bastards. She said with a hint of venom in her voice while Anko and Kurenai gasps. Why you killed them? Anko asks since the missing nin were a class in the bingo and were responsible for the rapes of a lot of females. Yeah, their heads are now trophies hanging on our walls with the other missing nin we killed. Your Nakama's comrades were in bad shape so we brought them here until they fully recover. She finished. And Kurenai spoke up. I always thought that the Ryushi Juti was nothing more than a killer. Kasumi chuckles at that and replies. A lot of people think that. True, he is a bounty hunter with a flea on sight order, but he's not cold-blooded. He just does his job like any other hired merc does, but he only goes after those who are corrupt. He'd never kill an innocent person, but he without a doubt hates traitors, criminals, and rapists. She said, getting raised eyebrows from them. After leading them through the tunnel for 30 minutes, Kasumi removes the blindfolds from them and they blink for a while and then slowly open their eyes to see themselves in what looked like an underground tunnel with different paths that lead to God knows where. Okay, where the hell are we? She asks while looking around. Stay with me and do not wander off or else. Kasumi said in a warning tone. Kurenai looked at her funny and asked. Or else what? That was when they heard a thunderous roar echo through the tunnel shaking the ground. Or else you'll end up running into whatever just roared. A voice said behind them. They turned around to see the Ryushi Juti standing behind them carrying a dead wild boar over his shoulder with one hand. Kurenai and Anko noticed that his eyes were now a deep blue cerulean and were slitted and he wore his hood down, revealing wild, spiky blonde, shoulder-length hair that was similar to the Yondaime's. He then looks at Anko and raises an eyebrow. You should really start wearing clothes that aren't so revealing, Kunoichi-san. He says in a humorless, making Anko's face turn red. Shut up, she yelled while he shrugs it off. He removes the mask from his face, revealing a pair of canines that jutted from his upper lip. Both Konoha Kunoichi blush when they saw his face. Yondaime-sama, Kurenai asks while the 17-year-old rolls his eyes. Sorry, but I'm not him. Kasumi, take this to the preserver room. I'll escort them to where their friends are. Naruto says and tosses the dead boar to Kasumi, who catches it but grunts when she hefts it over her shoulder. Damn it, Aniki, why do you always kill the heavy ones? She cries out while he chuckles. Stop crying, you big baby. You know how our old man likes boar meat. He says and watches her leave but mutters about fathers with bottomless pits and brothers being smartasses. Naruto smirks when she disappears and places an arm on Anko's and Kurenai's shoulder, causing them to tense up but relax when gives them a small smirk. Calm down, you two. I may hate Konoha but I won't damn the innocent. Come with me and I'll take you to your friends. Ha says in a calm and gentle tone. Anko and Kurenai nod and try to hold in the blushes that were about to form on their faces while Naruto leads them further into the labyrinth. As they walked through the labyrinth, Kurenai and Anko kept glancing at the man who was supposed to be a cold-blooded killer who'd kill you if you were his target, but he hasn't given them a reason yet to be afraid of him. That's when Kurenai spoke up. Our Ryushi-san, that girl who escorted us into this place called you her Aniki. Are you two siblings? She asked and he nodded. Yes, she's my half-sister on my mother's side. He replied. Anko raised an eyebrow at what he said. Half-sister. So you both have the same mother but different fathers? Again he nodded. My biological father died the day I was born, and no, I won't tell you who he was. And don't let her appearance fool you. She may be young but she is strong enough to handle 3 squads of Anbu-level nin. Naruto replies while they look at him in shock and could tell that he wasn't joking. Wow. Anyway, how bad was Hana and Yugo's condition? Anko asks. Hana, I believe, had 3 broken ribs that punctured her left lung, a gash on the back of her head as well as a crack on the right side of her skull. Yugo had 3 broken ribs, a dislocated shoulder, and burns from a lightning jutsu. He says, and Kurenai gasps but gets a reassured look from the man. Relax, Maimouto managed to heal them but they won't be fighting for a while. Naruto replies and they find themselves near a door that says recovery room. Well, here we are, he says and pulls out a key, then removes the cuffs that were around their wrists. Anko and Kurenai rubbed their wrists while Naruto opened the door and lets them walk in first. When the 2 kunoichi walked in, they saw a bandaged-up Yugo and Hana in a bed petting what looked like a black and brown ferret and a 2-tailed fox that were cuddled up in their lap. Anko and Kurenai's eye widened when they saw their 2 friends were okay. Yugo turned her head to see Anko and Kurenai and her eyes widened in shock. Hana did the same and said, Anko. Kurenai. They asked. The next thing the recovering kunoichi knew, they were in a bear hug courtesy to Anko and Kurenai. You're both okay. Anko cried out while Yugo's face was turning purple as was Hana's. Anko-chan, please let go, my ribs are breaking. Yugo strained while Hana was struggling to breath. Air Kurena-chan. I need air. Hana chalked out. Anko and Kurenai noticed what they were doing and released them while smiling sheepishly. Sorry about that, we're just happy to see you're both okay. Kurenai said while Hana and Yugo smiled. Thanks, but try to show it by not crushing our ribs. Hana said while massaging her sides, making them laugh a little. Yugo noticed that Anko's trench coat was shredded and her fishnet suit had claw marks. The female swordsman raised an eyebrow and looked at her. Anko, what happened to your outfit? She asked, and Anko just looked at it and a small blush appeared on her face and she rubbed the back of her head. It's a long story, Yu-chan. Anko replied and looks at Ryushi. Speaking of clothes, you wouldn't have any to spare, would you? Anko asks while Ryushi pulls out a scroll, unrolls it, and in a puff of smoke, there was a black 2-piece bodysuit and a black trench coat. Sorry, but I don't carry women underwear on me, so you'll have to use the ones you're wearing. He said, but then noticed a blush on Anko's face and looks at her with a raised eyebrow. You are wearing underwear under your clothes, aren't you? He asks, and Anko just looks away from him, not saying anything. Hana's sweat drops, Yugo sighs, and Kurenai face faults at her friend's actions but then stands up glaring at the snake user. Anko. Kurenai yells out and the woman looks at her trying to look innocent. What? She says in an innocent tone. Kurenai starts to talk but just lets out a frustrating sigh and shakes her head. Forget it, I'd just be wasting my energy. She mumbles while Anko just grins. You know you love me, Nai-chan. She coos out while Kurenai looks at the Ryushi Juti. Would you won't hold it against me if I end up strangling my friend over there? She asks while Anko makes faces behind her back, getting a sweat drop from the hunter. Kurenai turns her head back at Anko, who again has the innocent look on her face. Kurenai's row twitched and was gonna go strangle her until she felt something rub against her leg. She looks down and sees a 2-tailed fox kit with crimson fur rubbing against her leg. The kit looks up at her with light pink eyes and yips. Kurenai just looks down at the fox and stares at her, but on the inside she was squealing kawaii. The genjutsu mistress smiles down at the fox, kneels down and scoops the fox up in her arms while the fox yips and starts to lick her face. Kurenai giggles as the fox continues to lick her. She then scratches her behind the ear, getting a purr from the fox. Anko was pouting at this. No fair, why do all the cute ones go to Nai-chan first? She whines while Hana and Yugo giggle at this. Naruto chuckles at this then speaks up. I'm pretty sure you two are hungry, so I'll bring you some food back. He says and starts to leave. Kurenai was gonna object, but her stomach growled out loud, causing the ruby-eyed woman to blush in embarrassment. Anko snickered and felt something on her shoulder. She looked and saw a black and brown ferret that squeaked and licked her face. Anko squealed and hugged the furball, nuzzling her cheek against it. She's so kawaii. The snake mistress squealed while the other's sweat dropped at this. Kanahagakure no Sato Hokage Tower. What did you just say, Asuma Sarutobi? Tsunade yelled from her now destroyed desk that was nothing more than firewood. Shizune was curled up in a corner, trembling like and holding a trembling tauntaun in her arms and close to her body. Asuma was now gulping and sweating like crazy as he saw the murderous look in Tsunade's eye. The Ryushi Juti has Kurenai and Anko H Hokage-sama. If we hadn't handed them over, then his partner would have killed Kiba and us as well. As the leader of the mission, I had no other choice but to do as he said, not to mention that he temporarily disabled Guy, Kakashi, and Neji without even trying. He also told me to tell you to keep your ninja in check or he'll see to it that our forces are cut in half. He explained while Tsunade growled out loud, picked up her chair, and threw it out the window, shattering it. She ignored the scream that came from outside and then let out a frustrating sigh. Great. Just great. 4 of my kunoichi are in the hands of an S-class merc. There's no telling what he's doing to them. Tsunade says, but then Asuma speaks up. Actually, Hokage-sama, I don't believe the Ryushi Juti will harm them. He says while she looks at him with a look that says, explain. Didn't the Anbu who reported this say that him and his partner saved Hana and Yugo from the missing nin and his partner treated them? If wanted to kill Hana and Yugo, he would have done so a long time ago. He responded while the last Senju looked at the wall and sighs again. True, but what about Kurenai and Anko? They're now his captives and I can't send any more ninja. He'll weaken us and that'll give villages like Iwa an opportunity to attack us. Can this get any worse? She groaned out, and that's when an Anbu appears kneeling down to the leader of the village. Hokage-sama, the council wishes to speak with you. He says and shunsons away while Tsunade smacks her head. Why do you hate me, Kami-sama? She asks and walks out of her office. Council chambers. 20 minutes passed while the council members were arguing about what happened. Tsunade heard enough and slammed her fist onto the desk. Shut up. All of you. She yelled and they did. Tsunade lets out a sigh and Sum speaks up. Hokage-sama, we need to deal with the Ryushi Juti now. He has my eldest daughter as well as 3 of our kunoichi captive. Who knows what he's doing to them? She cried out. Yasha just snorts at this. I don't see what the big deal is. They can be replaced. The Haruno matriarch says, but ends up getting a glare from the clan heads, especially Sum, who wanted to rip her apart. I dare you to fucking repeat that, Haruno. Sum snarled while the woman paled. Yasha, shut up. I didn't ask for your input. Matter of fact, the civilians and elders leave. This is a shinobi matter. Tsunade says and ends up hearing them whine and protest to this until Tsunade punches the table. I said get the fuck out. She roared while a vein throbbed from her head and the civilians and elders left out of there and she sighs. Listen, Sum, I understand that you're worried about your daughter and you want her back, but you have to understand that the village is in a dire situation and our forces still haven't recovered from the invasion. I just can't send an army to find a few people even if said person is a future clan head. I'm sorry, but I can't waste my efforts on this. She said while Sum just looks down, not saying anything. She then gets up and leaves the chamber so no one could see the tears running down her face. Inoichi was about to go get her, but Chusa grabs his arm and shakes his head while the Yamanaka clan head sighs. Hokage-sama, I know you don't want to risk losing any more of our ninja to this man, but we can't just leave their fate in his hands. We need to send another rescue squad. If we have to, let it be 2 squads. Chusa spoke up. Tsunade looks at them in disbelief. Are you serious? Do you realize that I'm sending a squad to face someone whose reputation could and probably on par with that of the Yondaimes whose status had a flee on-site order? She asks them and they look at her and nod. We're not asking to have them try to kill the man, but at least find out where his hideout is and if it's possible rescue the 4 kunoichi he has captive. Inoichi replies. Tsunade looks around and sighs. Very well. I'll send 2 squads to find and if possible rescue them. She says, then gets up to leave. Underground lair. After being given food, Anko was now wearing the skin-tight black bodysuit with a gray mini-skirt and a black trench coat and was now scratching the belly of Hanon, who was vibrating on her lap while Anko was giggling. "You like that, don't you, girl?" Anko cooed while the ferret lets out a gurgling noise. Naruto was sitting down in a chair watching this and then sees his sister walk in with her mask and cloak off and glares at her brother, who raises an eyebrow at her. "What?" he asks, and she just glares at him for a few seconds until she speaks up. "I got boar blood on my outfit and I had to take 2 baths to get rid of the smell. Do you have any idea how gross pig blood smells?" she says, raising her voice at him, but he shrugs. "Yeah, but I'm not a sissy like you or Imouto," Naruto says and ducks when she throws a black bingo book at him. "Baka. In case you forgot, I'm a girl," she yelled while he just smirks at her. He then gets up and walks towards her. They stare each other down and then he thumps her on the forehead with 2 fingers, getting a yelp from the girl. "Stop complaining so much. What would the old man say if he heard you crying over being covered in boar blood?" he replied, and then, wham! Naruto ended up getting hit with the flat end of what looked like a broadsword on the top of his head but ends up disappearing in a puff of smoke. "Who are you calling old Gaki?" spoke a deep masculine voice. The one who had the voice was a silver-haired man wearing a silver and black outfit, and a sword was resting on his shoulders. Kasumi looks at him and smiles. "Hey Tu-san," she says while Anishi looks at her, smiles, and ruffles her hair. "Hey Squirt, is your brother giving you a hard time again?" he asks, getting a nod from her while Naruto appears out of the shadow of the walls and glares at Anishi. "What's your problem, old man? Are you trying to bash my skull in?" he growled out while Anishi just shrugs. "Don't be an ass to your sister Gaki. Besides, I knew you'd have a cage bush and take that hit," he says with a grin on his face, but Naruto sighs. That's when the 4 kunoichi's eyes grew wide and their jaws dropped. "Wait," Anko yelled and pointed to Anishi. "You're their father?" Anko asked. Anishi blinked for a while, then nods. "Yes, I am." "Why?" he asks like it was no big deal, and Anko's eyes get even bigger and looks at Naruto. How old are you?" she asks, and Naruto blinks also. "I'm 17, is that a problem?" he asks, and Kurenai's expression is the same as Anko's. "Nani?" they both yell. 17. You mean to tell me that you, the Ryushi Juti, the most dangerous bounty hunter in the elemental nations, as a teenager?" Kurenai cries out in shock. Naruto looks at them and smirks. "Yes, I am a teenager, so what's the problem?" he asks, and they just gape like fish. Kasumi looks at them and giggles. "I don't see what the big deal is. I can take on 2 squads of Anbu level nin and not get winded," she says. Anko and Kurenai turned their heads so fast, you'd think they'd snap. Kurenai cries out while Anishi chuckles. Anko, however, scoffs. "Yeah, right, Gaki, like you could take on Anbu level ni," she said, only to feel a knife pressed against her neck, and Kasumi was behind her with a smile on her face but was releasing killer intent, making Anko shiver a little. "I would appreciate it if you didn't call me a Gaki or underestimate me. I've killed Chunin, Junin, and Anbu level nin, and I have their heads to prove it. Would you like me to add yours to my collection?" she asks in a sweet but deadly tone. A bead of sweat drops from Anko's brow and she shakes her head. "Then think before you speak, Anko," she says, and then appears next to her brother, who was looking the other way with his hands behind his head. Kurenai, Yugo, and Hana looked at the girl in shock. "Kami, she's fast," they thought while Anko still looked shocked. Konoha main gate. At the gate of Konoha, Team 11 and Team 9 along with Kakashi, Sakura, and Sai were at the main gate getting ready to rescue their comrades. Asuma was in front of them and spoke up. "All right, listen up everyone," he ordered, and they did. "We are going back to the jungles of Uzu no Kuni to rescue 4 of our comrades from the Ryushi Juti," he replied, getting shocked looks from everyone. "Troublesome. Why is Hokage-sama sending us to face him? He's an going on SS ranked mercenary. We may have him outnumbered, but not outmatched. I mean, you did say he was faster than you, Hatake, and Guy combined. Shikamaru replied, getting a shocked look from everyone, especially Lee, who looked at his sensei. Guy-sensei, is it true? Was he faster than you? The second spandex wearer asked, and Guy nods. Yes, he was Lee. It was my sixth sense and reflexes that kept me from sustaining any serious injuries. His speed was on par with mine, with my weights removed, as was his strength. I don't even think he was fighting us for real, he said, making the rookie's eyes widen, and Neji decided to speak as well. It's true. He took me down with only 2 hits, even though I attacked him from his blind spot. Choji's eyes widen. So we're basically facing someone who's stronger and faster than our senseis? He asks, and Asuma nods while Shikamaru muttered, troublesome. I'm gonna be honest with you. We're facing a hired assassin and hunter that make our Anbu and Hunter Nin look like amateurs. We have no idea what type of techniques he knows, so we have to stay on our toes with this guy. That, and he has a partner who could be on our level. We need to fight as a group and not get distracted by anything. One small mistake can result in all of us getting killed, he said in a voice that meant business. The rookies nodded while a few gulped. And one final thing. There are creatures in that place that none of you have ever seen, so be extra careful. Now let's move out. He orders, getting highs from them, and they move like blurs out of the main gate and head for Uzu. Question is, will they all make it out of the place alive? Kurenai was currently helping Yugo back into the bed, and Hana was currently sleeping with Benihime sleeping on the end of her pillow. In the underground lair, the sound of swords clashing can be heard. Anko and Kasumi were in an underground dojo watching Naruto and Anishi engage in a kenjutsu battle. Anishi was using his claymore while Naruto was using his okatana. Sparks were flying everywhere as the 2 swordsmen performed a series of thrusts, slashes, and parries. Naruto does a horizontal slash at Anishi's chest, but he blocks it with the flat side of his sword, and he takes a swing at Naruto's head. The blonde ducks and ends up losing a few strands of hair. Anishi does a downward slash and Naruto rolls away. Naruto the lunges at the man and swings the okatana, and Anishi does the same. Their blades clash for a while, then they perform several slashes at each other, which were all met by cold steel. They clash one more time and were adding more strength to their weapons. Their blades grinded against each other, and the 2 warriors were grunting and staring each other down. The blades started to glow orange on the edges, and Naruto grins at the silver-haired man, who raises an eyebrow. Naruto then breaks the stalemate and pushes Anishi and the claymore back. He then kicks Anishi hard in the chest and sends him flying backwards and hitting the wall. The man lets out a grunt, and when he tries to move forward, a blade was pressed against his neck. Naruto was in front of him grinning. Anishi sighs and drops the claymore. I yield, kid, he says, and Naruto removes the blade from Anishi's neck and sheathes his sword. That now makes it score 72-68, with me ahead by 4. Naruto asks, and Anishi scoffs. Whatever, Gaki. Oi, Kasumi-chan, you're up next, he says. Kasumi nods and grabs her sword. Naruto walks out of the dojo with Anko following behind him. Naruto grabs a towel from a shelf outside and slings it over his shoulders, and wipes his face off with one end. Man, I've never seen a sword fight as awesome as that one. I'm willing to bet you're a sword master, right? Anko asks while Naruto nods. Yeah, you can thank Anishi and Maika-san for that. They practically beat Kenjutsu into me. I got the scars to prove it, he said in a joking manner. Anko laughs at what he says. Too bad Yugo missed it. She's been practicing swords play since she could walk, and I'm willing to bet if she wasn't still recovering, she'd challenge you to a duel, she said, getting a smirk from the blonde. I bet she would. There aren't any decent swordsmen out there except for a few I met. So what about you? Ever consider learning? He asks, and she shakes her head. I did at first, but due to my past, I never got to learn, she said with a frown on her face. Naruto looks at her for a while and does the same. Let me guess, Konoha? He asks, and she lets out a sigh and nods. Yeah, unfortunately my so-called home turned against me when my former sensei decided to go rogue. Hell, what's even worse is that even most of my comrades minus Kurenai, Yugo, and Hana keep their distance from me like I'm a plague. Maybe I should have left when they banished the Uzumaki kid. Naruto raised an eyebrow at this. So you don't hold any love for your village? He asks and she lets out a frustrating sigh. No, not after all the bullshit I had to go through. If I could, I'd throw this stupid headband on the ground and spit on it. She said, pointing to her forehead. Then why don't you? He asks, making her stop in her place and look at him like he was crazy. Naruto stops and looks back at her. What? Anko's face then gets serious. And have Hunter Nin hunt me down and having to look over my shoulder for the rest of my life. Not what I had planned for my future, if I had one. She mumbled and Naruto lets out a sigh and rubs the back of his head. Why not stay here? He asks and her eyes bulge out of her sockets. Are you serious? She asks and he nods. Yeah, this place is mostly jungle. No ninja would be crazy enough to face the creatures in the wilderness here, and plus, this is my territory and if you were under my protection, people would think twice about harming you. He said, and she thinks about the pros and cons of the offer. Sure, she'd be away from the glares and insults, but what about her friends? How would they react if she became a nuke nin? He saw the looks of confusion on her face and places a hand on her shoulder. If you're wondering about your friends, then I'll offer them the same. I'm pretty sure they'd accept your decision if they were truly your friends. Besides, don't friends look out for each other? He asks and then walks away from her while she just stands there and thinks about what he says. Recovery room. Hana, Yugo were sitting in their bed eating what looked like stew from a bowl while Kurenai was sitting on a chair eating hers. The door then opens and they look up to see Anko with a look of confusion on her face. Hey Anko, what is it? Kurenai asks and the snake user sits down in another chair and looks up at them. I'm just confused right now, Kurenai. Anko says, and the red-eyed woman blinks for a while. About what? About Konoha. I'm starting to have second thoughts about that place. She says, making all three kunoichi's eyes widen. What do you mean, Anko? Yugo asks. I don't think I want to be a Konoha nin anymore. She says, and their eyes become even wider. What? Anko, are you serious? Kurenai yells only for her to nod. Why Anko? Yugo asks in a serious tone. Anko brushes her hair back and looks at them with an even serious tone. You should know why, Yugo. All three of you should know. She said while they flinch and Kurenai tries to be the voice of reason. But Anko, Konoha is your home and, she tries to say but then stops when she hears a bitter laugh come out of her. Oh, shut up, Kurenai. That shithole is not my home. It never has been after that bastard marked me and left me to pay for his actions. She said, and Kurenai cringes from the sound of her voice. I know your life has been bad, Anko, but what? Snapped Anko, but what? You have no idea what kind of bullshit I've had to go through in that fucking village, Kurenai Yuhi, so don't act like you do because you don't. Anko yelled as tears fell from her eyes and Kurenai looked down at the ground knowing she was right. You don't know what it's like to have people glare at you every day and call you a traitor and a behind your back and have the ones who are supposed to be your comrades sneer at you. Do you know how that feels? Because if you do, please tell me and prove me wrong. She challenged and Kurenai just stayed silent. I thought so. So tell me why I should go back to that place after all the crap they put me through. That's when Yugo spoke up. What about us, Anko? We're friends, right? Friends don't abandon each other. She says, and Anko glares at her. If you were my real friend, Yugo, you'd want what's best for me, right? What about what I want, huh? Why should I give up my life for a bunch of bastards who could care less about me and then piss on my grave when I die? While the people were protecting her sitting in their homes sipping tea and relaxing, we are out there putting our lives on the line. Why should I give up what I want? Half of the things you three have I didn't. I can barely get a decent home in that place without having it ransacked. I had to spend most of my nights in a damn forest. I bet you didn't know about that, did you? She asks, and Yugo became silent also. Anko, we just don't want to lose you. Hana said. Anko lets out a frustrating sigh and looks at the ground while wiping the tears away. Kurenai gets up and walks over to Anko and pulls her into a hug. I'm sorry for being selfish, Anko. If it'll make you feel any better, I'd join you if you decide not to go back to Konoha. She said, and Anko looks up at her in shock, as do Hana and Yugo. Are you serious? Anko asks while Kurenai smiles and nods. Yes, I am, Anko. If you choose not to go back to Konoha, I will stay here with you. She says. And to prove it, I'll do this. She undoes the knot in her headband and drops it to the ground, shocking Hana, Anko and Yugo, whose eyes to widen at this. Anko smiles at this and removes hers as well. Then she tosses it near Kurenai's and spits on it. I can't believe you two did that. Hana cried out while Yugo groaned. Anko grins and just hugs Kurenai while nuzzling her cheek. I knew you loved me, Nai-chan. She says and hugs her even tighter. See, can't breathe, Anko. Kurenai strains out while turning blue. Anko lets her go and looks at Yugo and Hana. What about you two? Want to join us? Anko asks. Yugo and Hana look at them. Yugo can join, but me, well, I can't. Hana said with a downcast look on her face. Oh yeah, your clan. Well, I'm sure we can work something out. Anko says with a grin on her face. The door opened and a red-haired woman walked in and blinked when she saw Kurenai and Anko. Kur-chan. Anko-chan. What are you two doing here? She asks, and both Kunoichi froze and turned their heads to see their sensei looking at them with a raised eyebrow. Kei Kushina-sensei? Kurenai asks while Anko's eyes grew watery. Kushina smirks at them and crosses her arms. Well, isn't this a surprise? All three of my students are here. The three of you have grown into strong Kunoichi just like I knew you would. She said, but then was tackled by a purple blur. Sensei. Anko cried as she hugged Kushina with all her strength. Kushina let out a grunt but returned the hug while Anko sobbed on her shoulder. Sensei, where have you been all this time? I thought you died during the Kyuubi attack. She asks while Kushina rubbed her back. It's a long story, Anko-chan. She says. Anko lets go of her while wiping her face with her sleeve. Kushina then looks over at Kurenai, who was getting up, and walks towards her sensei. Well, look at you, Kur-chan. You must be fighting off the males every day. She says with a grin on her face while Kurenai sighs. Sadly, yes. So how have you been, sensei? She asks. Great. I've been spending my time with my new husband, daughter, and my long-lost son. She answered, and Kushina's eyes widened. Your son wouldn't happen to be the blonde male who looks exactly like the Yondaime, would he? She asks, getting a nod from the woman. Yes, he is, and if you are wondering who he is, then he's right above you. She said and points her finger up, and they see Naruto hanging upside down on the ceiling staring at them. It took you two this long to notice me. What if I was an assassin? Oh wait, I am. He says with a smirk on his face and vanishes, then appears next to Kushina. Hey Sochi. She says, and Kurenai's and Anko's jaws drop and looked at Naruto, who blinks. Sochi. Sensei, the Ryushi Juti is your son. Anko yells while Kushina nods. Yep, but Ryushi Juti is only a title. Do you know who he really is? She asks, and Anko and Kurenai shake their heads. You should know, Anko-chan. You cut my left cheek during the second part of the Chunin exam. He says with a grin on his face. Anko blinks for a while and then her eyes bulge and points to Naruto. Gaki. She asks, and Naruto nodded. Kurenai's eyes were bigger than dinner plates and her jaw fell. Naruto. Kurenai cries out. Hey Kurenai-san, how have you been? He asks. They look at him like he's a ghost. Kurenai started to say something, but then Anko yelled out. What the hell happened to you, Gaki? You went from a loudmouth orange wearing shrimp to this. She says while Naruto looks at himself and shrugs. Meh, I hit a growth spurt when I turned 14. That, and I finally got to eat something other than ramen and expired food. He said while they flinch and curse Konoha. Man, imagine the reaction on Konoha's face when they find out that you are the Ryushi Juti. What's next? You're the son of the Yondaime? Anko asked with a cheeky grin on her face. While Naruto blinks and looks at her. Actually I am, he says, and Kurenai's jaw drops. See, he's also the son of the Yandai. Wait, what? Anko screams out while Kushina laughs at their reactions. Come on Anko, I'm practically a carbon copy of the man, though I doubt those idiots would believe it's saying the demon brat is mocking us by looking like the Yondaime. He says while the four sigh at this. Don't even get us started on those civilians and elders on the council. It's their fault Konoha is in the state it's in. Speaking of fault, Kurenai, tell them what you did to Cyclops when he bad-mouthed the Gaki. Anko says with an ear-splitting grin on her face. Kurenai's eyes widen and she blushes while rubbing her arm. I didn't do anything major. She mumbled, not wanting to be the center of attention because Naruto and Kushina were looking at her. Nothing major. Ha. Asuma told me how you bitch slapped Kakashi in the face twice and slammed him into a wall in the Hokage's office. Then you cursed the man out and ranted about how much of a failure he was for saying you had no talent as a ninja and didn't deserve to be one. It took both Asuma and Guy to pry her off the man and from choking the baka to death. She then spat on him and called him trash and stormed out of the office. Not once in my life have I seen Kurenai so angry. I thought I saw the Shinigami hovering over her head when I went to talk to her. Anko finished and Kushina looked at Kurenai with a shocked look on her face. The red-eyed woman wanted to strangle Anko right now. Yugo and Hana were covering up their mouth trying not to laugh while Naruto grinned and appeared next to Kurenai with an arm wrapped around the woman, grinning like a Cheshire cat. I didn't know you cared, Kurenai-chan. I feel so happy, he says in a teasing tone and hugs her with one arm, making the woman blush at the contact. Oh my Kami, he's hugging me. And his muscles feel so gray. No. Bad Kurenai, he's 17 for goodness sake. But what if he's into older women? No, don't think that, she ranted in her mind. Kushina saw this and a gleam appeared in her eye. Anko saw this and was pouting because Kurenai always attracts the hot males. Hey, why does she get a hug and not me? She whined while Naruto looks at Anko and smirks. You might try to cope a feel on me, he says, making her sputter. I will not, she cries out. You're lying, hubby-chan, he says, making her brow twitch and turns away from him in HMPHS. Naruto then lets go of Kurenai, who let out a small sigh, but on the inside she was fuming because she was enjoying that hug. Naruto then walks behind Anko and wraps his arms around her, making the woman tense up, and then whispers something in her ear. Everyone watches as Anko's face glows red and she starts to giggle like a schoolgirl. He then lets go of Anko and walks back to her mom, who was shaking her head. Kurenai blinks in confusion and look at a red face Anko, who was having certain thoughts in her head, and looks back at Naruto. What did you say to her, Naruto? She asks, getting a grin from the blonde. Oh, you know, he says and snickers. Kurenai looks back at her friend and sighs. Never mind. Knowing Anko, she'll try to get you alone if you're not careful. She warns him. I know, and I blame Dad for passing on his gene on having a thing for dangerous women. Naruto says, getting a laugh from Kushina. It's true. I was the only female aside from Sum who scared Minato. She responded and then heard the door open. They turned their heads to see Anishi carrying Kasumi on his back with her right ankle wrapped up in bandages. What happened to her ankle, Anishi-kun? Kushina asks while the man sighs. She sprained it trying to do a counter-attack. Kasumi was wincing in pain and cursed. Sweet Kami, it hurts, she says while Anishi chuckles and sets her down on the couch and places her right leg on one of the pillows. Just stay off of it for a while, squirt, he says, and she nods while laying our head back. Benihime ran into the room and leapt onto the girl's shoulder and licks her cheek, making her giggle and scratch the fox behind the ear. That was when a puff of smoke appeared and a raptor appeared before Naruto. Anko and Kurenai jumped back when they saw the creature, but the raptor ignores them and speaks. Naruto-sama. Those Konoha nin you and Kasumi-sama chased out have come, but with more ninja. Do you want me and my pack to deal with them? He asks while Naruto shakes his head. No, I'll deal with them personally. You and the others steer clear from them, all right? He says, and the raptor nods. He looks back at Anko and snorts at her. Anko's brow twitches and she was about to pounce on the alpha, but Kurenai places a hand on her shoulder and she huffs. "You're lucky, you overgrown turkey," she says, and the alpha snorts again. "Dream on, Ninjin," he says and disappears in a puff of smoke. Kushina blinks at Anko. "Do I even want to know?" she asks, and Naruto shakes his head. "No you don't. Ka-san, the Konoha nin have returned. I guess that means I have to give them a reason to take my threats seriously," he says and starts to walk out of the room, and Kushina speaks to him. "Naruto, I'll go with you," she says, and the blonde nods. The two walk out of the recovery room and Anishi chuckles. "Those Konoha nin are gonna be going home broken, and that is if Kushina lets them live," he says, while the four kunoichi cringe. Kurenai, Anko and Yugo knew how dangerous Kushina can be when she is pissed. Uzugakure Jungle. Naruto and Kushina, who were wearing face masks that covered half of their face, were leaping from tree to tree with their gear on. Their eyes were once again yellow-orange and with a tint of red in them. "They're not too far, Ka-san, and it seems there are more of them. Most of them are former friends though. I know. That bastard Kakashi is with them. I'm gonna break that traitor in half," she says and clenches her fists. "Not if I do it first," Naruto says, and they increase their speed. The Konoha nin were also leaping from tree to tree, with Neji keeping a lookout for the Ryushi Juti and his partner. They then land in a clearing and start to run across the field. Neji suddenly stops, as do the others. "Neji, what is it?" Asuma asks, and the Hyuga frowns. "Something is wrong here. I don't know why, but I sensed two signatures heading here, but then they just vanish. Almost as if they didn't exist." The Hyuga replies while the others look at him in shock. "What do you mean they just vanished, Neji?" Sakura asks while his face remains the same. "Like I said, they just vanished. Unless they did a camouflage-based jutsu, then I would have known," he said, but little did they know that underneath their feet, a dark figure was in there, waiting to strike. For Cammy's sake, that harpy can't shut up for once. What's the deal with her voice? Is she part howler monkey? Doesn't matter, because they're gonna be going home broken or dead, Naruto thought as he snaps his eyes opened. Kakashi tenses up and leaps away from his position, as does Guy and Asuma. "Hey, all of you, move out of that spot," Guy yells, getting confused looks from them until the ground beneath them cracked a little. Neji, Lee and Tenten see this and hop away from the spot, and the ground exploded. Sakura had her hands covering her eyes from the dust, and when she removes them, a fingerless gloved fist descended towards her and hit her squarely in the face, and sending her flying out of the dust cloud. Asuma, Guy, and Kakashi saw this, and the pink-haired kunoichi went skidding across the ground with a purple bruise on her face. They then heard more sound of punching and grunting and saw Ino, Kuji, and Shikamaru fly out also, hitting the ground with a thud. Choji had his hand on his back, Ino was clutching her stomach in pain, and Shikamaru was clutching his chest area. Lee, Neji, and Tenten appeared next to their down comrades in a defensive position. "You four okay?" Tenten asks while Asuma helps Ino up, and Choji does the same with Shikamaru. "Ow. Felt like I got hit by an angry bull," Ino says while Choji nods. "Yeah, it felt like my dad hit me, only 10 times harder," he mutters. Sakura is helped up by Kakashi while rubbing her jaw. "Cammy, that hurt. I thought my head was gonna be knocked off of my shoulders," she says. When the dust clears, the rookie's eyes widen in surprise and fear as they look into the cold eyes of the man who had a flee on sight order. The Ryushi Juti. Naruto stared at his former comrades, but his eyes turned icy when he saw Sakura and Kakashi. They were traitors who only cared about the Uchiha. The more he stared at them, the angrier he got, and it took all of his willpower not to kill them right here and now. Ino and Choji gulped when they looked into his eyes, and a bead of sweat appeared on his face. Lee, Neji, and Tenten were nervous as hell. The man then started to speak up. "Apparently the Hokage doesn't seem to take my threats seriously when I say I will reduce her forces if she doesn't keep her ninja on a leash. So tell me, Konoha nin," he says, and his eyes close. "Should I kill you?" he says, and the rookies cringe in fear. Or break you, he replies in a demonic tone as his eyes snap open once again, releasing ki on the rookies, whose eyes widen in fear as they each saw visions of their own deaths. Then it died down and they were now sweating a little. That was when Guy spoke up. Sorry Ryushi, but we were given orders to find and retrieve the 4 kunoichi you have in your custody, he said, and Naruto growled. And what was my answer last time? It was no, correct? Well, once again I'm saying no. Now we can do this the easy way or the hard way, he says while cracking his knuckles. The easy way is that you leave with your limbs intact. The hard way is that I make you leave or I kill you and send your bodies back to the Hokage. Pick wisely, he says in monotone. They all tense up. Meanwhile, in the tree branches not far from them, Sai was watching and pulled out an ink brush and scroll and opens the scroll. He's not aware that I'm in the tree. Now's my chance to catch him off guard, he says, and prepares to draw on it until. Catch who off guard? Asked a feminine but dark voice. Sai's eyes widen in shock, and when he turns his head slightly, he sees a red-headed masked female with yellow-orange tinted red slitted eyes crouching behind him. In the field, Asuma was about to speak up until they heard an explosion from the opposite side of the forest. The Konoha nin's eyes widen when they see Sai flying out of the dust cloud and landing onto a hilltop while skidding back a few feet. Kushina appears near his face, and before he could react he was kicked in the chest hard and was sent flying towards the Konoha nin. Choji holds his hand up and it expands. Choji catches the ink user and sets him down. Kushina appears next to her son and glares at the Konoha nin. How dare you scum enter our lands? Who do you think you are? She growled out while they cringe at her gaze. Kakashi spoke up. We are here to, he said, but was cut off. I wasn't talking to you, trash, so shut up. She growled and glared at Kakashi. The Cyclops' fingers twitch at being called trash by this redhead. I thought my partner made it clear to your leader to keep you fools in check, she says, and reaches for the hilt of her blade. I guess we have to send you back in body bags to teach her a lesson in taking warnings seriously, she says, and they tense up. Damn it, Asuma says, and pulls out his trench knives. All of you stay on your toes and work as a team. Do not get distracted for even a second, otherwise you can consider your lives over, Asuma calls out, and the rookies nod. Kushina scoffs at them and speaks. Do you fools honestly think that your numbers will beat us? You brats are nowhere near our league, Kushina says as she looked at the rookies. Don't get cocky, Aibo. They might surprise you with their teamwork, Naruto says, and she nods. The Konoha nin and the hunters stare each other down. Suddenly the two of them vanish in a blur. Kakashi tries to pull his headband up to reveal his Sharingan, only to get punched in the chest by the Ryushi Juti and sent skidding backwards. Sai pulls out his Tanto and swings it at the hunter's head, but he ducks from the slash and spears the pale root in the solar plexus with his shoulder, making the ink user cough out in pain. Naruto grabs him by the back of his shirt and then flings him into Ino, who barely dodges the flying body. He then appears by her side, palm strikes her in her bare torso. Ino gasps out but then ducks from a roundhouse kick, but the blonde spins and leaps over her to avoid being caught in Shikamaru's cage main no jutsu, and the Nara curses. He then sees a round object heading for him at high speed. Naruto dodges the rolling human boulder and Choji turns his body and heads for Naruto again. Naruto smirks and his hand glows blue and charges at the Akamichi. He then cocks his fist back, and when he launches his fist at him, he punches the rolling ninja hard and sends him flying into the air and in a lake, making a large splash. Choji. Ino cries but then is kicked in the back by Ryushi and she crashes into Shikamaru, who went tumbling backwards. Pathetic, he says, and sees Kushina duck from a slash attack from Asuma's trench knife and plants her hand on the ground, lifts her body and pushes her feet forward, performing a mule kick into the man's torso and sends him flying. Neji and Lee try to flank her and strike her blind spots, only for the redhead to intercept Lee's fist and leap over Neji's and avoid his palm strike to her head. She grabs his arm and when she lands, twists it and then grabs the back of his collar. She sees Tenten head towards her with a bow in her hand while twirling it. Kushina spins around twice with Neji and flings him towards Naruto, who roundhouse kicks him in the jaw, making his body twirl into the air and crashes into the ground. He then sidesteps an incoming punch from Sakura and knees her in the gut. The pink-haired weakling keels over and gets backhanded in the face by Naruto. Weakling, he says, and blocks a kick from Guy. The man then launches a right hook to Naruto's face and Blonde avoids it. Naruto cocks his fist back and sends it towards Guy's skull, but he ducks and does a sweep kick at Guy's feet. The spandex wearer leaps over the attack and performs an axe kick and brings it down on Naruto's head. Naruto rolls to the left and Guy's attack creates a small crater. Naruto wastes no time, jumps into the air and performs aerial kick angled downwards at Guy and ascends towards the man at an incredible speed. Guy sees it and barely manages to avoid the impact. A cloud of dust and debris rises into the air and the ground shakes a little. Naruto then appears out of the dust clouds and charges at Guy full speed. Guy does the same and engages Naruto in high-speed taijutsu fight. Kushina was blocking and parrying Tenten's attacks with her katana while the weapon's mistress was performing a series of swings and thrusts. Kushina avoids two strikes which go for her head and leaps over her and lands behind her. She then lands and swings her sword down at her, but Tenten blocks it with her bow staff and Kushina smirks under her mask. Well, at least some of the kunoichi in Konoha have skills, she says, and Tenten narrows her eyes. What's that supposed to mean? She asks, and Kushina tilts her sword up and flings the bow staff away. She then sends a kick towards Tenten, who does a series of back flips and lands back on her feet. Oh please, half of the kunoichi that are your age are a joke. They care more about their looks, she starts to say, until Sai tries to roundhouse kick her from behind and the kunoichi ducks as the attack passes and she strikes him with a chakra-enhanced kick in the torso, sending him flying backwards and into a large rock. Then they do their training. Why are you not like the other two? She asks, and Tenten glares at her. Don't you dare put me in the same category as those two. She pulls out a scroll and summons a katana out of it. She then twirls it and charges at Kushina at full speed. The two of them engage in a kenjutsu battle with Kushina, who was performing a series of slashes, thrusts, and parries as was Tenten, but Kushina was using only one hand. I've been training to become a real kunoichi since the day my parents taught me how to throw a kunai. Those two are an embarrassment to not only the real kunoichi but to women everywhere. I am not a helpless little girl who needs a male to save me. I'm the real deal lady, unlike those two pampered girls, she says, and swings her katana at Kushina's side, but she blocks it with the flat end of her sword. I see, she says, and then swats Tenten's sword away, shocking the sword mistress. She then sheathes her sword and grabs Tenten's arm and twists it behind her back, making the girl wince in pain. Kushina then wraps her arm around her neck and puts the girl into a choke hold. Tenten lets out a gurgling sound and grabs Kushina's arm and tries to pry it off, but her grip was too strong. You are strong, but you have a long way to go before you're at my level, Tenten Higurashi, she says, and her eyes widen. How do you? She started to say, until Kushina releases her neck and arm and then kicks her away and then stops an incoming kick from Lee and a palm strike from Neji by grabbing his wrist and Lee's ankle. She then smirks and starts to spin while swinging the shocked taijutsu user around the air. She then stops and slams Lee into the ground face first, and she grabs Neji by the neck and slams him into the ground hard, creating an imprint of the boy. Nice try, she says. She then hears a bone-shattering punch and a scream at Naruto's direction and sees Kakashi get punched in the ribs by a chakra-enhanced punch and then keels over from having 4 of his ribs broken. Naruto kicks him squarely in the jaw and he hits the ground face first. Asuma sends a right hook at the blonde hunter, but then the hunter blocks it with his palm and strikes the man in the side with an elbow. Guy swings a right hook at his face, but Naruto crouches down and plants his hands on the ground. He pushes his lower body forward with his legs spread out and locks them around Guy's waist, shocking the man. Naruto smirks under his mask and then he twists his lower body and swings it around with Guy still locked in his legs and he then flings the man at Asuma and they are sent tumbling through the grass. He then sees Choji in the air with his arms expanded and he comes down performing a hammer fist at Naruto who leaps back as the move creates a small crater. Choji then gets up and starts swinging a series of left-right hooks at the hunter but he ducks and evades them. Gur holds still. Choji yells at he swings another right hook. Naruto stops and grabs the enlarged hand shocking Choji who then tries with his left but Naruto catches it also and squeezes both hands tightly. Choji struggles to push his arms forward, but Naruto lowers the fists down slowly as the Akamichi continues to struggle. Naruto then smashes his forehead into Choji's, stunning the bulky nin. He then performs a left and right hook onto his face and then punches him into the gut hard. Choji spits up saliva and Naruto grabs him by his mane and flings him over to Ino who barely catches him and they both skid back a little. That was a bad move on them because Naruto appears before them and kicks Choji in the stomach with enough force to send both him and Ino flying. Shikamaru had a look of shock on his face. Unbelievable. This guy is too strong and too fast. He doesn't let his guard down for even a second. He ranted into his mind but then Naruto vanishes and palm strikes Shikamaru in the face sending him backwards. You shouldn't daze off Nara. He says as Shikamaru crashes into the ground and darkness consumes his vision. Kushina is seen holding a struggling and squirming Sakura in the air by her throat. TCH. Are you even a real kunoichi? Look at you, you're so pathetic. She says and adds more pressure into her hand squeezing the pink-haired girl's throat even further. It would be an insult to kill my clan to kill a weakling like you. I wouldn't even feed your corpse to my summons. She then throws Sakura with enough force to send her crashing into Sai who lets out a grunt. Naruto then appears next to his mother with a bored expression on his face. Neji and Lee struggle to get out of their imprints in the earth. Tenten was rubbing her sore back and Kakashi was now clutching his left side. Asuma and Guy were panting heavily and had bruises on their faces. Damn it. We can't fight them like this. They're too strong. We have no choice but to retreat. Asuma says and Guy nods. Yes. I agree. He says and Kakashi just grunts out a hi. That was when Naruto decides to speak up. I suggest you leave now while your limbs are still intact with your body's Konoha nin. This is your last and final warning. Next time I will kill you and your heads will be mounted on my wall. He says getting looks of horror from them. Asuma gulps and nods. Choji appears with Ino's and Shikamaru's unconscious forms under his arms. Let's go everyone. This mission is a failure. He says and they all nod and shunshin away. Naruto looks at his mother and smiles. Well, that was fun. I got some exercise from kicking their asses, he says while Kushina smiles back. Come on Sochi, let's go back. She says and they shunshin away. Underground compound. Kasumi was talking to the four kunoichi about the times when her, Naruto and their parents traveled around the elemental nations hunting missing nin and meeting new people. Anishi was sleeping on the couch with a Playboy magazine covering his face. The four kunoichi were amazed and Anko spoke up. So Kasumi, when did you get your first kill? She asks and Kasumi thought about it. I was 8 when I got my first kill. I killed a chunin from Takigakure. She says and their eyes widen. How did you take it? I'm killing another person at that age. Kurenai asked and the redhead sighs. I lost my lunch and cried for a while. Tu-san told when I reacted that way it means I felt remorse for killing another person and didn't enjoy it. Let me ask this. Why would you three leave your village for Naruto? She asks. Yugo, Kurenai, and Anko look at her and think for a while. That's when Anko spoke up. To be honest with you Kasumi, it's because Konoha has fallen from grace the day the Yondaime died. It's become dirty and rotten and worse, the Hokage is not as powerful as we all thought. The civilians and elders have taken most of the Kage's power over the village and are now deciding the fates of our comrades. They don't care about us. They only care about themselves and power, and I will not stay in a place that won't give a damn about my life. I say to hell to Konoha. I'd rather be a missing nin. Anko answers. Kurenai and Yugo nod at her response while Hana sighs. I wish I can join you, but then I'd be a disgrace to my clan. I don't know what to do. Hana says that was when Naruto walked in with his gear off, as did Kushina. She sees Anishi snoring on the couch with a magazine on his face. She looks at it and her eye twitches. She then walks over to the silver-haired man and removes the magazine from his face. She then leans over and kisses him on the lips. Anishi opens his eyes slightly and wraps an arm around her back and deepens it. The four kunoichi look away. Kasumi covers her face with a pillow and Naruto rolls his eyes and looks the other way. After kissing for 10 minutes, they stop and Kushina pushes herself off her husband while he smirks when he gets a look of her cleavage. Hey Shina-chan, he says. She just smiles and grabs his hand, pulling him off the couch and heading out the door with his hand in hers. Oh, where are we going? He asks and she looks back at him with a seductive look on her face. To make me happy, she says as they exit the room. Kurenai's, Anko's, Yugo's and Hana's eyes widen but still have their heads turned. Kasumi was mumbling words into her pillow and Naruto's brow twitched. Okay, I did not need to know that. He mumbles. Anishi has a shocked look on his face, but then a huge grin appears on his face and he then picks her up bridal style, getting an eep from her. I'm gonna make us both happy, he says with a perverted grin on his face, and he shunshions him and his wife to their private room. Inside of a cave were 9 shadowed figures, and each of them were wearing black cloaks with red clouds on them. They were standing in a circular pattern until the one with the ripple-like eyes spoke up. Zetsu, were you able to find out anything about the Kyuubi Jinchuriki? He asks, and the half-man half-plant shook his head. No, leader Sama, the location of the Kyuubi vessel is still unknown. We have searched every part of the nations for his location, but it seems it was all for naught. After his banishment from Konoha he just disappeared. Zetsu explained while the man's eyes narrowed. So he just disappears without a trace. It's possible he's hiding, knowing that we are after his biju. Kisame says while Itachi remains quiet. This will take our plans back a little, yeah. Deidara says, and the hunchback next to him scoffs. You think? Without the Kyuubi our plan will not succeed, and I hate to wait. The hunchback says. A figure with green eyes spoke up afterwards. Sasori, stop your complaining. If Kisame and Itachi had gotten the vessel back, then we wouldn't be in this situation. He said while Itachi and Kisame glared at him. Shut up, heart stealer. We would have gotten the brat if Jiraiya hadn't showed up. We were no match for him since he is the strongest of the Sannin and would have killed us even if more of us showed up. The shark man growled. Hey, so you fuckers just ran away like a bunch of pussies. Pathetic. If it were me, I'd sacrifice that old shit to Jashin-sama. A man with purple-red eyes said. Watch your mouth, Hidan, before I shave you with Samahata. Kisame threatened, and Hidan was about to retort until Pain flared his chakra. Enough. Despite the setback, we'll still continue with our plans. Deidara, Sasori, you are to head to Suna to capture the Ikibi container. The rest of you have your biju to capture also. The Kyuubi container will be the last we go after if we manage to find him. You are all dismissed, he says, and the 7 members vanish. Konan looks at her partner and speaks. This isn't good, Pain. With the Kyuubi's disappearance we can't complete. I know, Konan, but until the boy shows himself we can do nothing. He says, and they also vanish from the cave. Uzumaki underground compound. Naruto was in the armory sitting in a chair sharpening the metal head of a spear with a smooth rock. After doing that for a few minutes he looks at the throwing weapon and analyzes it, looking for any scratches or chipped edges. He then gets up with the spear in his hand and twirls it a few times while he headed to a target. He stops twirling it in his hands and looks at the target for a while. A smirk appears on his face and he rears his right arm back, and then with a quick throw he sends the spear soaring at the target. Shuck! The head of the spear hit the bull's eye and went through the target and pinned it on the wall. Naruto looked at what he did and smiles. Awesome. The spear penetrated the wall. He says as he walks over to the impaled target and pulls it out while the target falls to the floor. He inspects the head of the spear and twirls it. Not a scratch on it. He says to himself and then places the spear back on the weapons rack. He heard a whistle and turned his head to see Anko, who was leaning against the wall smirking at what she saw. "Remind me to never get in your line of fire, Naruto," she said, getting a chuckle out of him. "I didn't throw it using my full strength, Anko. If I had, then there would be a series of holes going through the compound." The blonde hunter stated. Anko's eyes widen in awe when he said that. "I don't know whether to be impressed or scared. I feel sorry for the bastard that ends up being your prey," she said with a grin on her face. Naruto watches Anko look around and check out the different weapons. "I have to admit, these weapons are pretty amazing. You've been trained in using all of these?" she asks and Naruto nods. "Hi, I have. Ka-san and Anishi were slave drivers when it came to mine and Kasumi's training," he says. Anko blinks, wondering what type of training he had to go through. "Was it that bad?" she asks. "If I had to pick spending my life in the forest of death over their training, I'd pick the forest of death," he answered. Anko nearly fell over when he said that. "Are you serious? The forest of death is one place you don't want to live in. Why would you pick that over training?" she yelled. Naruto smiled, revealing his canines and spoke. "Believe me when I say the places I've been to and trained in make that place look like a kiddie park," he says while her jaw dropped. "I can tell you're not kidding. Kushina sensei was a sadist when it came to training me, Nai-chan and Yu-chan. I can't even imagine the torture she must have put you through. You poor unfortunate bastard," she says as she walks over, pats him on the back. "I lived and that's what counts." I think she scarred Kasumi for life though. Whenever Anishi too mentioned the word dodge, she'd twitch and have her hand on her kunai pouch. He replied while in a thinking pose. Anko's eyes were now owl-shaped. "That poor girl," she muttered and her face returned to normal. "Anyway, I wanted to know something, Naruto," Anko said while she followed Naruto out of the armory and through the lit tunnels. "What is it?" he asks. "Those raptors, did they come from a summoning contract?" she asked, getting a nod from Naruto. "Yes, they are, but they're a part of an old contract that has been around since the age of the Rakuto Sennin. It consists of ancient creatures who were a part of the evolutionary chain. Back in their time, they were considered the ultimate predators. Raptors are not just hunters, they act as a team and are smart. Facing one of them would be impossible because of their claws, but to face more than one is beyond suicide. They'll rip you to shreds before you even have a chance to scream. Trust me when I say being killed by a pack of raptors is the worst death you can ever have," Naruto explained. Anko was speechless. "So I guess wandering the jungles here alone would be a bad idea, right?" Naruto nods and smirks. "Yes, but there are creatures out there that are more dangerous than the raptors," he replies. "Wow, and what about your eyes? They changed when we faced you and your sister not too long ago." Naruto closes his eyes and opens them again, revealing a pair of yellow-orange slitted eyes with a red tint around the pupil. "I gained this when I passed the tests of my mother's clan and from the bosses of the summoning contract our clan has," he answered and deactivated them. While they were walking through the underground compound, Anko was rubbing her left shoulder and Naruto noticed. "So that snake left his mark on her too. I can get rid of it since it's weaker than Sasuke's version. I'll ask her later if she wants it removed." He thought and spoke up. "Your neck bothering you?" he asks and she nods. "Yeah, that stupid snake's hickey is bugging me. I swear when I see that bastard I'm gonna mount his head on my wall. Right after I skin him alive and castrate the fucker," she muttered while Naruto smirks. "It seems that I'm not the only one who wants to hunt that snake. He is on my top list along with the Uchiha brat and Akatsuki," Naruto replies while Anko looks back at him. "Do you actually think you can beat Orochimaru? The guy's a Sannin for crying out loud and managed to kill the Sandaime and Yondaime Kazekage," she states while Naruto scoffs. "Only by mere luck. Orochimaru beat the old monkey because he was old. If he was 10 years younger than Orochimaru would have had his ass handed to him. The Yondaime Kazekage was an arrogant and stupid fool for trusting Orochimaru and paid for it with his life. While Orochimaru is strong, he acts like a snake. He waits for his prey to let its guard down and strikes without warning. Plus, from the way he fights, his style is based more on ambushing the opponent than doing a frontal assault. He stated while the snake mistress gawks. Still, do you honestly think you can beat a guy like Orochi Tem? She asks with a skeptic look on her face. Considering the fact that he's arrogant and doesn't have the guts to face someone stronger than him, yes, I can beat him. He says and smiles a predatory smile. Besides, I'm pretty sure you'd like to see his head mounted on a wall and displayed as a trophy. He said while a smirk appears on her face. That smile suits you, Gaki. You sure I'm not rubbing off on you? She asks in a teasing manner while he snorted. Please. More like my roommate rubbed off on me. He muttered and he swore that Benihime was grinning like crazy while wagging her tails in his mindscape. Anko blinks a couple of times and shrugs. Whatever. So what else do you have to do around here besides train and hunt? She asks. Aside from that and traveling around the countries and gain bounties, nothing. I've been to almost everywhere in the elemental nations, so there's not much to do except visit some friends I made and take job offers from daimyos and company owners. Heck, they even offered me their daughter's hands in marriage as payment and I kindly declined, but, let's just say said daughters woke up happy the next day. He said, wiggling his eyebrows, and Anko gawked. You mean to tell me that you, damn Gaki, you must have balls of steel to screw their daughters behind their backs? She said with a cheeky grin on her face. Naruto looks at her but then smirks. I didn't. They offered themselves as payment with their fathers agreeing to it. He said, causing her to face fault but get up with a blush on her face. WHAAAT. Anko's voice echoed through the labyrinth. Kasumi was helping Yugao using physical therapy by helping her stretch, and Kurenai was doing the same with Hana until they heard the yell and the red-eyed beauty sighed. Why can't she ever be silent for once? Kurenai mumbled while Kasumi giggled. That's nothing. You should see Naruto ni and Tu-san go at it. Their voices could wake the dead and kill them again. She said. Yugao smiled and Hana giggled. The Inuzuka heiress noticed a red tattoo with a yellow outline on her shoulder and spoke up. Hey Kasumi, is that a tattoo on your shoulder? She asks, getting the others' attention. Kasumi blinks and looks at her shoulder. Yeah, but it's more like a tribal marking than a tattoo. She said. Can we see it? Yugo asks and the girl nods. Kasumi then turns around and grabs the back of her shirt and lifts it, revealing 3 red marks which ended diagonally at the end of the right side of her torso. They also noticed some faded scars on her back and torso area. Hana's eyes widen as she looked at the tattoo. Does this represent your rite of passage, Kasumi? She asks. The redhead turns her head and nods while pulling her shirt down. Yes, it does. It's a symbol in the Uzumaki clan that states that I am an adult in the eyes of my clan. Naruto ni has one also, but his is a different color. She explained. We gained this by passing the clan test. It's not easy and doing it can cost you your life. Most of our clansmen died trying to pass this test. She explained, getting wide eyes from them. And those faded scars, are they proof of your test? Kurenai asks, getting a nod from the girl. Yes, most of them are from the test, but the rest are from hunting. She said. No kidding, said a masculine voice behind Kurenai. The Genjutsu mistress jumped back and turned around only to see Naruto with Anko standing beside the blonde hunter. Please don't do that, she said, getting a raised eyebrow from the blonde hunter. Don't do what? He asks, making her brow twitch. Appearing and disappearing out of nowhere. It's creepy, she mumbled while he smiled. I know. I just like messing with you, he stated, making her huff up and fold her arms against her chest while the other 3 giggled until Kasumi spoke up. Hey Ni-san, show them your tattoo, Kasumi said with a grin on her face, making Naruto's eye twitch. No. Why not? Hana whined, wanting to see what his tattoos and body look like. Because if I do, A certain someone in this room will rape me. He answered and got slapped on the shoulder by a blushing Anko. Jerk. She muttered but then jumped when he popped her in the ass with his hand. Behave or I'll put you over my knee and spank you. He said, wagging his finger in front of her face while she pouted. Fine, I'll behave, meanie. She said, turned away. Kurenai was goggle-eyed when he saw how he was taming Anko. How do you keep her under control like that? She asked while Kasumi giggles and speaks up. Naruto ni can tame just about any dangerous creature in the jungles here. If he can deal with them, then dealing with your friend is not a difficult task. She answered. Naruto looked at Hana and Yugo and spoke up. So how is your recovery going? He asks the two. Fine. My ribs are close to recovering but it hurts to bend and stretch, so Kasumi-chan is helping me using physical therapy. Yugo answered and Hana nodded. Same here. I only have minor headaches now. She responded. I see. That's good to hear you're both recovering well. You should fully recover in a couple of days, just be sure not to strain your bodies. He says and they nod. Kurenai and Anko go and help Hana up. Naruto walked over to Yugo who blinked but then eeps when he scoops her up in his arms and held her bridal style in his arms. Said female Anbu had a small blush on her face while Anko, Kurenai, and Hana glared at them while he carried her to the bed and gently placed her down on it. Thank you Naruto-kun. She said. No problem Yugo-chan. He said while Hanon leapt onto the bed and curled up into Yugo's lap and yawned. Naruto blinks and looks at the ferret. Hanon, where have you been? He asks. Hanon looks at him and squeaks, making Nato chuckle and stroke her ear. You should really stay out of Anishi 2's secret stash. He'll turn you into a scarf or pelt if he catches you. He says until they hear a loud voice. Damn it Naruto, keep that weasel out of my jerky stash or I'll turn her into a scarf. The silver-haired merc yelled, making Naruto and Kasumi snicker. Honestly, San should know he can't hide anything from Hanon. She can find and steal anything she can get her paws on. The redhead said while Naruto went over to carry a blushing Hana over to her bed and gently placed her down while Anko and Kurenai fumed for a while. Anyo, Naruto-kun, Hana says and Naruto looks at her. Yes. He asks. Do you think it'll be possible for you to send a letter to my Ka-san about my well-being? I'm pretty sure she's worried sick about me. She asks while Naruto thinks about it and nods. Sure, I'll send her one via summon. It's the least I can do since your mom let me hide in the cabins near your clan's compound when I was younger. He said, getting a smile from her. Thanks Naruto-kun. She says and he smiles back. You're welcome. He says and walks over to the table and pulls out a small scroll with an ink brush and ink, opens it and starts to write in it. A few seconds later, he seals it back up, bites his thumb and places it on the ground. Kuchiyoshi. He says and in a puff of smoke, a green and yellow monitor lizard with yellow slitted eyes appeared. US summoned me Naruto-sama. The lizard asks and the blonde nods. Yes, I need you to take a whiff of the girl with the tattoos on her face's scent and take this letter to Konoha to Asuma Inuzuka. He orders and holds the small scroll in front of the monitor's face. Said reptile grabbed the scroll and swallows it before dispersing. Well then, I think I'll go visit Gaara and see what he's been up to. He says, making the four females blink in confusion. Gaara, the goddamn cage? Kurenai asks and Naruto nods. Yep. I happen to be on good terms with him after that ass kicking I gave him a few years back. Heck, I even assist some of his hunter Nin and Anbu in missions. Hey sis, you wanna go to Suna? He asks with his answer being a groan. No, but you'll just drag me with you, right? She asks, getting a nod and evil smirk from her brother. Damn it. I really don't like traveling to Suna. I hate sand. Do you know how uncomfortable sand is when it gets into certain parts of your body? I hate it. That's why I stay away from the desert. She mumbled. Suck it up, you big baby. Don't complain just because you end up getting sand in your trousers and walk around funny. He said, but then ducks when a chair flies past his head and shatters into pieces when it hits the wall. Shut up. You didn't have to say that out loud, you ass. She yelled with her face as red as a tomato. I'm your big brother, sis. I can embarrass you whenever I want to. He says with a cheeky grin on his face while a tick mark appears on her face. I swear one of these days, Aniki, I'm gonna get you. She mumbles and shunshuns away while he laughs. I look forward to it, Imouto. He says and shunshuns out of the room also. Kanahagakure Inazuka compound. Sume was sitting on a couch looking at a picture of her and Hana, who was 11. She in front of the camera grinning with the Heimaru triplets sitting in front of her. Said triplets were laying on the floor near Sume, and one of them whined while looking up at the sad matriarch and nuzzled her arm with his nose. She looks down and smiled sadly. I know. I miss her too, she says. Kiba walks into the room limping due to the fact that Kasumi struck him hard in the nuts with her kick and had to be on temporary leave. Kiba, however, was pissed and embarrassed because of what happened. Damn that female hunter. She didn't have to kick me that hard. He muttered as he walked back up the stairs, but yelped when he tripped on one step and fell. Sume chuckled when that happened and felt sorry for her youngest pup. Hopefully he hasn't lost the chance to have kids from that kick. She says, making Kuromaru, who was sleeping on the couch, snorted. That was when a puff of smoke appeared in front Sume, making her, the triplets, and Kuromaru spring up and prepare to fight whatever came out of the smoke. When it clears, they see a monitor lizard looking up at them and blinks a few times. Sume Inazuka, he says, making her blink a few times. Yes. The matriarch asks. I have a message from the Ryushi Juti about your daughter Hana Inazuka. He answered. Her eyes widened and had a look of worry in them. What about my daughter? Tell where he has her now, or I swear I'll turn you into a wallet and feed your remains to my partner. She demanded while Kuromaru growled. The monitor lizard flicks his forked tongue and tilts his head. No need for threats, Sume-san, I'm just a messenger. He says politely, and his neck expands, and when he opens his mouth, a scroll comes out and lands in front of Sume. That scroll will tell you everything, Sume-san. He says and disappears into a puff of smoke. Sume picks up the scroll and carefully unrolls it, praying that her daughter's remains weren't in the scroll, but to her shock it was a letter, and started to read it. Sume Inazuka. In case you're wondering, this is the Ryushi Juti, and before you freak out, I'm informing you that your daughter is safe and sound. She is currently recovering and will be able to head back to Konoha in less than a week. Her injuries were not fatal, but they were serious, so I treated her and her partner. You also have two choices. I can have my summons escort your daughter back to Konoha so she won't classified as a missing nin, or you can head to the Uzu no Mori and my friends will escort you to a hidden location, but do not have any Konoha nin come with or follow you, and do not inform the Hokage about this. I'll trust your judgment and pick wisely. Sincerely, Ryushi Juti. P.S. Thank you for the time you saved my life. I owe you and your clan a lot. Sume finished the letter. She was glad her daughter was safe, but was skeptical. She couldn't inform the Hokage or have any Konoha nin follow her. What was she supposed to do now? But what confused her the most was the thank you for saving his life a long time ago. She sat down on the couch and began to think about what she could do to get her daughter back. Kase no Kuni Desert. In the windy and sandy desert of Kase no Kuni, two hooded figures were walking across the desert. They were Naruto and Kasumi. While they were walking, Kasumi was holding her cloak close to her body and her eyes were squinted. I hate the desert, she says to herself. Naruto rolls his eyes as they kept walking through the windy desert. Stop fussing already, Imouto. I already told you that we can't summon because it'll cause unwanted attention for us. He stated while she mumbled. I hate the desert. Naruto just rolled his eyes as they continued onto their destination. Front gates of Sunagakure. At the front gates of Sunagakure, two Chunin Suna were leaning against the wall looking up at the sky with bored expressions on their face. This is so boring. Why did Kazekage-sama put us on gate duty? The one on the left asks while the one on the right side shrugs. Who knows and cares? It's better than having to do patrol around the borders. I heard there was gonna be a major sandstorm coming soon. He said. Oh yeah, that's right. Poor bastards are gonna be caught in it. Now I'm glad I'm not doing border patrol Keiji. He said, getting a nod from the other Chunin. Too true, Seto. Though I'm worried about my sister being on border patrol. Kaiji says, causing Seto to chuckle. Keiji, Kion can handle herself. She is a Junin and one of the best wind users in our village aside from Tamari-sama. He stated. I know, but I can't help it. He mumbled, making Seto chuckle. He was about to say something until he heard a cough which got their attention. They looked in front of them and suddenly gawked. It was the Ryushi Juti, Hunter God, and his partner aka Mashin, Red Devil. Hey you two, how's it going? Naruto asks until they regained their composure. Ryushi-sama, Mashin-sama, how's it going? Keiji asks only to be bopped in the head by Seto. Baka. Don't say something so casually to them. Do you want to end up like that missing nin, Taro? He yelled at his partner who paled. Naruto saw this and laughed. Hey now, no need for formalities. Me and my partner just came here to meet with the case cage if he's not too busy. He stated, getting a nod from Keiji. I see, well, the case cage is in a meeting right now with the council, but you can enter the village if you want. Keiji says. Alright, we'll do that, and don't worry, we won't cause any problems, just be sure you don't become a missing nin in the future. He said in a mock serious tone. Keiji paled and started to sweat bullets while Kasumi sighs and hits him lightly in the ribs. Stop scaring the gate guards. It's bad enough most of the boys my age are afraid of you in this village. She stated, getting a shrug from her older sibling. Whatever. Let's go find Tamari-chan and hear gender challenge brother. He says, causing Kasumi to snicker as they passed the gate and entered the village. Meanwhile, two figures wearing straw hats and black cloaks with red clouds on them were walking through the desert heading towards Suna. They were Deidara and Sasori. Hey, it's been a while since you visited your former home, yeah? Deidara asks Sasori, who grunts. It has indeed. It's a shame my old home has gotten so weak after the wars. To think it has become the weakest of the 5 major countries. He mutters. From what I heard, Suna has regained more of its military force back when the Wind Daimyo gave them more funds and higher-ranking missions since they cut off the alliance with Konoha, yeah. He explained. Sasori looked back at him and back at the sandy desert. Interesting. The so-called strongest village in the elementals is not so strong after all since they banished the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Deidara snickers and nods. Yeah, from what I heard, the kid was a major influence in several countries. The leaders weren't very happy with that and cut off trades and alliances with them. Hey, Onoki Oji must have had a field day when he heard about that. He says with a grin on his face. Sasori rolled his eyes at his partner. Deidara. What is it? The blonde bomber asks. Have you heard the rumors about a merc who goes by the name Ryushi Juti? He asks. Makng Deidara stop in his tracks and look at Sasori. Yeah, I have, but I thought he was just a myth. Rumor has it that he's never lost a bounty or failed a mission he was given. He also leaves behind the mangled bodies of his victims at the country borders with their heads gone. The way people talk about him, they make him sound like he's the Shinigami born of flesh and blood, yeah. He answered. Correct. I heard that he has a flea on sight order in the bingo book by Iowa, Kusa, and AIM. It is said that his skills rival that of Hanzo the Salamander, who was able to defeat the 3 Sannin. Deidara almost fell when Sasori said that. Stronger than Hanzo? No way. The only one who could match Hanzo and live would have been either the late Shiroi no Kiba or the Sandaime Hokage. I wonder why Leader Sama hasn't tried to recruit him. Deidara asks. Simple, you baka. If the man has a flea on sight order and is considered to be more dangerous than the Kiroi Senku, would you approach him? Plus, after completing his missions he vanishes. No one knows where lives. They say he's a ghost who comes and goes, not leaving a trace of himself behind. He stated. Wow. I heard he keeps his victims' heads as a trophy. Hopefully we won't be facing him in the future. I sure as hell don't want my head on his mantle. He said. I'll gladly do it for you if you don't hurry up. We have a tanuki to catch and Yeah, you hate to wait. The blonde IWA nin said mockingly, only to duck to evade a mechanical scorpion-like tail. You're pushing your luck, brat. He snarled as they continued on to their destination. Naruto and Kasumi were in a dango shop eating some dango and soup when Naruto paused for a moment. Kasumi saw this and spoke up. What is it, Aniki? She asks. I don't know, but I have a feeling something is gonna happen soon and it's not a good thing. He said. Kasumi frowned and nodded. She knew whenever Naruto paused to do something and had a bad feeling, it was something serious. I see, was all she said, and they continued to eat, knowing that a storm was gonna hit soon, and it's not a thunderstorm.